Well, we'll dive in. It's wonderful to meet you. Thank you for taking a minute out today. I appreciate your time.
Great to be here, Joe.
So, where are you located on the planet?
I am located in Northern California, just south of San Francisco.
Okay, excellent. There's a tech guy I used to listen to, Leo Laporte. He was in Petaluma. Is that close?
The Petaluma is on the other side of the of San Francisco, the northern side, so
Okay,
over the Golden Gate. I
okay.
am remarkably close to San Francisco Airport.
So I've heard a rumor. I don't know if you've heard this, but they say that they paint the Golden Gate Bridge every single day.
Well, it's very big.
Yeah.
So it probably takes, and out here in Northern California, we actually have only two seasons. It's dry and wet.
That's it. I get it.
Okay. And that's why it burns, by the way, is because when it's dry for months.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
But when it's wet for months. We've actually entered wet. And I don't think they can paint the bridge during wet.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
they probably do paint it every day during dry, but I'm not an expert on painting the Golden Gate Bridge.
Yeah.
They want it to stay its color, and it's right on the Pacific Ocean,
Yeah.
so it's getting salt oxidation
All
constantly.
the time. Yeah, I think it was a Trivial Pursuit question. So, but anyway, I'm in Kansas City, Missouri. It's wonderful to meet you. And I think, you know, cancer is such a huge, huge thing for all of us. It's been for a while, and I'm looking forward to getting into it. And before we do that, I want to know, one of the things that we've all lived through here in the last 4.5 years was getting through this pandemic. How many
Yeah.
ripples and waves did that create in your world that you're still dealing with, or how did you change your life based on living through that?
Okay. So personally, um, we don't have any high risk factors. Nobody's over 65. My kids were very healthy. But here in California, the schools were shut for over almost 2 years. So
Yeah.
that had pretty significant mental health impacts, particularly on my youngest. It led us to put her in private high school so that we were confident it would be open.
Yeah.
Um, on the positive, I connected closely with a number of people because we were doing calls every week just to see another human.
Yeah.
Um, on the cancer arena, because of my family history and my genetics, my screening was very diligent every 6 months.
Yeah.
But during the pandemic, we shut down screening. We only shut that down for 3 or 4 months, but my time to get screened, I guess, was March, and it was shut down, obviously.
Yeah.
But I got in, I mean, as soon as they said they were taking appointments, I was on it. So I was in the first week or two.
Yeah.
And I saw my radiologist, who was my doctor for 20 years. She actually did an endorsement of my book. Um, and I said, "It's great to see you, Harriet." She's like, "It's great to see you." And I don't see anything, which gives me a lot of relief. I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "Well, every week when I screen, I diagnose three breast cancers that the woman didn't know was there. She didn't feel, she wasn't aware of it. I haven't been able to do mammograms for over 12 weeks, which means there are 36 women who have a breast cancer undiagnosed
Wow.
that has grown because I couldn't practice medicine." Right. And I make that point. May we never live through a pandemic again. Obviously, that's a nightmare.
Yeah.
But the need to be vigilant on self-exam and on screening when screening is possible. For breast cancer, it's possible. For prostate cancer, it's possible. For skin cancer, it's possible. So you must do it. For testicular cancer, it's possible. So for anywhere it's possible, you need to be vigilant and advocate. I put it on my calendar when I needed to call. Of course, with my particular risk profile, one of the things I joke about in the book, I had a frequent flyer uh, loyalty card to the breast center. And, I was at the global services level. I mean, anytime, any place.
Yeah.
But that's not right for everybody.
Yeah.
But whatever is right for you, you need to do.
Yeah. So, in your role as an author and an advocate, I want to know if to get to the essence of what you do on a daily basis, I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of third graders. It's career day, and one of the kids in the back of the room is curious and is like, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" What's
Mhm.
your answer?
Well, now what I do for a living, my paying job, is I help leading heads of sales, heads of marketing, leaders of companies become more effective and better leaders. But what I also do is I advocate and I educate people facing cancer about how to make the journey as good as it possibly can be, how to get the best outcome possible, and how they can be a full partner, and really transform this curveball into at least an on-base hit.
So when you were 10 or 11 years old, take me back to what did you want to be? What was your ultimate dream for you?
Ah. So when I was 10 or 11, I thought I was going to be an orthopedic surgeon.
Okay.
And when I was 12, I had a really tough science teacher. Her name was Miss Coney of blessed memory. And she introduced us to chemistry. And I realized I don't like chemistry that much. And so perhaps medicine wasn't going to be my future. And I pivoted more into where I could work with people. And that led me ultimately to a 25-year career building tech companies where, really our most important asset are people. That's where all the creativity comes from. That's where all the relationships come from with our customers and our prospects. And I found I really enjoyed developing teams of people to be greater than they thought possible. And that same approach, by the way, is what I offer to people facing cancer, that this is disruptive, this is disorienting, this is frustrating, and you have more agency than you think.
What were the foundational elements that were planted, the seeds that were planted early on for you to have this career and to have this vigor for helping people
Yeah.
that are going through cancer to help them through that process?
So I'd say the foundation, my world was shook, right? When I was 13, my mother was only 36 years old and was the picture of health. I don't know who I thought at 13 should get cancer, but it wasn't, tennis champions who were phenomenally involved with their kids and never sick, but she developed breast cancer. And I did a bunch of research and concluded that healthy people with early stage breast cancer are going to be fine. Very black and white. I was 13. So when I was 15 and a half and it came back, it really was an earth-shattering moment because this isn't the way the world was supposed to work.
Yeah.
And that really planted the seed that things don't happen the way they're supposed to.
Yeah.
Should is maybe the worst word in the English language,
Yeah.
right? You mentioned you play jazz, and jazz is about improvisation, and something happens and you iterate and you deal with it. And when
Yeah.
I perform, because I also perform music, things happen on stage all the time, and you got to improvise. Well, it turns out that's kind of life.
Yeah.
Life is about the curveball that you didn't expect and how you improvise. So I had to adjust. Now I had to continue with my schooling and my sports and my social life to the extent I could. But I also knew every few weeks I was on the hook to make sure we had dinner and that my sister was well cared for. She was younger than me. And frankly, during that episode, I was 15 and a half, my friends really had no idea what to say or do because thankfully, they'd never seen this.
Yeah.
And back in the 80s, people didn't say, I have cancer. They went, it's cancer. Like it was a contagious disease,
Yes.
right? And
Yes.
so I was very lonely
Yeah.
and I was very scared and it was hard. And I think I decided at that point, like, why should it be this way?
Yeah.
And, when I was a little bit older, I started volunteering as a support person, specializing in the children of people facing cancer. I did that for a number of years. And then I started having my own family. Then my sister got it. And she was 29. She had just done an Ironman. Right? You talk about someone who is so healthy
Yeah.
and strong. And you went from this master or mistress of the universe to laying on the tile floor of her bathroom because she couldn't stop vomiting in 5 months.
Wow.
So, right, like curveball. And like that was awful. And how do we help people make it all less awful? And unfortunately, although I thought I did everything to prevent myself from getting cancer, I even scheduled myself for a prophylactic bilateral mastectomy. I was diagnosed with cancer the day before I was supposed to have surgery. And I said, okay, I've seen this twice, three times with my mother and sister, this breast cancer. My mother's had other cancers, still survives. I've seen it. I've seen it with lots of other family members. I've probably talked to hundreds of people that have faced or are in the family. How do I want to do this?
Yeah.
And it turned out all that knowledge actually helped me inform my approach. So, what I would tell the third graders, by the way, is I wrote the book because so many people said to me, your approach is different. I want your approach. How do you do that?
Yeah.
And it's not that I'm uniquely special in the world. I mean, we all are, and we all aren't. It's that I had a set of experiences
Yeah.
and a mindset that I was going to obliterate this cancer and I was going to live through it the best way I could.
So, did getting into music, being a musician, and in that world, did that help kind of abate and kind of help you cope with that realities of what you were going through since you were 15?
Absolutely. And what I love about music for me, I sing, I'm up front,
Yeah.
right? I can't think about anything else going on.
Yeah.
I've got to think about the music and the words and the audience and the experience and the energy. And that's it. So for however long I'm rehearsing or performing, I'm locked in. And that break is actually restorative.
So, what was the first live concert you saw that blew you away?
Well, I mean, I'm from Jersey, man. It's the boss.
Yeah, it's Bruce. I have to see him. I haven't seen him.
Oh my God, you must fly where you have to fly. The man does a show like no other.
He comes to Kansas City. He loves it here. I mean, he's been here and I have to see it. I used to run a couple labs for the YMCA's, and there was a guy at the front desk that just did not look like a guy. He was just a real muscular guy. Looked like he fell out of a Rocky film. And but he loved music and he used to always talk about Springsteen. He would just always tell me, "Dude, you got to go. Whatever you do in this lifetime, you got to see him."
You
So
do.
it's on my list. So I'm curious, as somebody, especially at such a young age, that had to grow up fast and shoulder a lot, you needed to have a hero. You needed to have a bedrock. Who was that for you?
So in a lot of ways, it is my dad, because my dad is a really great problem solver. He was devastated by my mother's second diagnosis, and in a very sweet way because it's how much he needs and loves her. In a very disorienting way when the person you think is Superman
Yeah,
finds kryptonite. And there's one episode I wrote about in the book where my mom had started chemotherapy and she was upstairs and she was weak and not feeling well. And dad and I were downstairs watching TV and he just started to cry. I'd never seen him cry. Now, I was only 4 when his father died, and I assume he cried then, but I'd never seen him cry. Even when they told us that she was having a mastectomy the first time, he was strong. Mom's strong. We're going to be through this. But, he was really exhausted and sad. So, in a way, that was upsetting, but in a way, it was liberating because, this very successful, very strong, very articulate human was vulnerable and was showing his deep emotions. And that created, if you will, space for me to have deep emotions. And it isn't a sign of weakness, it's a sign of being human and being real. And so, him, and I got to tell you, my mom, I mean, talk about someone who doesn't have 1 ounce of victim mentality
yeah,
in her person. Like, she's like, they can take me apart piece by piece. I don't care. I'm going to be here. And I asked her when I was a little older, I said, you chose a very aggressive surgery and a very aggressive course of treatment. And she said, yeah, I was strong and I wasn't playing for a 5-year outcome. I was playing for 50. I wanted to see my girls grow up. I wanted to see my girls be successful and have families. And I wanted to be there. And I was willing to do whatever it took. I mean, if that's not inspirational, what is?
Yeah, right, exactly. You've obviously come to this moral and biological crossroads many times with dealing with cancer. And there was a singer in Kansas City, her name was Molly Hammer, and she passed in 2020, but she had breast cancer, went into remission, and I interviewed her a few times, and everybody loved her here. And I remember the first time it was revelatory, we had our interview, and I said, "What did you learn? What changed after you got the diagnosis and got out?" She said, "I went from saying no to things to saying yes to everything." So what kind of revelations did you come to, and how have you changed and modified the way you see this reality?
So a couple of things. First off, I'm sorry that Molly lost
Yeah,
her journey. And it's wonderful that she's remembered and loved. And what she's talking about, we call the cancer filter. So cancer, no one wants it. I wish we could get access to the cancer filter without it. But when you go through it, it does cause a prioritization of what's important, what's not. I say, you appreciate, I appreciate life. I tell, I'm like, live big. So the changes for me were, I had to trust the universe a bit, right? I had to put my trust in my medical team. I had to trust in the community I'd built that they would be there for me. And after cancer, I had already made a shift professionally to go from being a head of marketing and a head of sales to coaching them. But I said, I have to trust that I don't have to force everything to get my business working. I can, for example, write this book. And I wrote the book without a business model. This isn't a book to drive my business. This is a book that is an act of service from someone who's been through this so many times to people that are facing it the first time.
yeah,
And I did it because I wanted to. And I thought it could help a lot of people. That's probably not something I could have created space for
yeah,
before I faced cancer.
yeah. So what's been one of the most profound letters or feedback that you've gotten from your book?
So I have a friend who her husband was diagnosed a very advanced and aggressive pancreatic cancer. And she's one of the people that reviewed the book and she had an advanced copy. And when she told me we got the diagnosis and I said, is there anything I can do? She said, oh my God, you already have. Your book is like a handbook. I'm using it constantly. It's helping me navigate. And by the way, she's a physician.
Yeah,
Okay. So, but she's like, it's helping me know what to ask, what to do, how to help him. I mean, thank you
yeah,
for this. It gave me something to find solid ground under me when my world literally turned upside down.
yeah,
And I was like, wow. And that's what I want to do. That's
yeah.
what I want to give people.
My one of my best friends, he's my son Miles, he's his godfather. He lost his wife to cancer some years ago, and it was really tough. And I remember that through that whole process, I told him, you got to grieve the way you grieve. I never had any kind of way of saying, there was things that I think people were really trying to urge him to do. And he just now, I mean, it's been 9 years, I believe. He just now is getting married, moved out of his house that they had. So there's a lot of things. And I think that's the thing that I see that we have to highlight is the triumphant ways that people come out of defeating this and live their lives and do things. I think that spreads so much light to people that are going through the process.
I think that's right. I think one of the important points is you're going to feel what you're going to feel on the timeline you're going to feel it,
Yeah,
right? And other people sometimes say things because they want to feel better, you know, you be strong, you got this,
Yeah.
stay positive. These are not the things to say. It's not your friends, it's not my responsibility to feel a certain way. It's my responsibility to do what I need to do to get through my treatment. And sometimes that's going to make me angry. And sometimes it's going to make me sad. And, there's grief. I mean, even just losing your breasts, there's grief.
Yeah.
One of the pieces of advice I got, and I remembered that my parents got this advice when my mother's cancer came back. But when my cancer was diagnosed and I was talking to some people in order to find an oncologist, one of the women that I didn't know, she said to me, by the way, after a few months, I got myself a therapist and I wish I had done it sooner. I said, you know what? That's a really good idea. I should find myself somebody to talk to
Yeah.
beyond my friends and family, somebody who isn't emotionally invested, and I don't have to worry about their feelings, where I can be whatever I want to be.
Yeah.
And I found there's this specialty I didn't even know about called psycho-oncology.
Yeah.
And these are therapists who specialize in the mental health of cancer patients and the people supporting them.
Wow.
And my psycho-oncologist, I found her like when I decide to do something, I'm fast.
Yeah.
So I was like, I need to find a therapist. Let me go find one. And I found three I liked. I interviewed two. When I met Sadie, I said, oh, that's the right person.
Yeah.
And even before we were working together regularly, I had an episode before I started treatment because I moved from my community hospital to a national comprehensive cancer center, which is UCSF. UCSF needed the actual slides from the biopsy of my tumor. And they told me that when I met with them. And I said, then, can I help? No, 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 we got it. A week later, and by the way, they told me we need your slides and our lab has to confirm the pathology before we can start treatment.
Yeah.
So to me, in my effort to keep things moving quickly, this was a potential source of delay.
Yeah.
And my tumor was a very aggressive type of breast cancer. Not aggressive like you had to start treatment tomorrow, but aggressive where I really don't want months to go by.
Yeah.
So a week into this waiting, I get a call from my doctor's assistant. He said, we're having trouble getting the slides. Can we take you up on the offer to help? It was 4 o'clock in the afternoon. It's now my number one priority, which is a message I want people to understand. Nobody is more invested in your care and your treatment than you.
Yeah. Yep.
Your doctor has a lot of patients. They care about you, but they have a lot of patients. You are your top priority and you have to advocate for what you need. So I
Absolutely.
get on the phone. Pathology department at my community hospital is really good. They're just not used to phone calls from patients. I'm calling, I'm getting, whatever. I get on hold. I finally get to a person and I said, I'm this person. You have my slides. I need to get my slides to UCSF. "Oh, okay, well, we have to find your slides." And I said to myself, I'm going to pretend I didn't hear that. Um, I'm going to pretend that that was a slip of the tongue because I'm sure you have them. And then she explains to me that, well, the pathologist has to sign off for them to be released, and they've left for the day. I was like, great. Can this be on their desk for first thing tomorrow morning? I really need to get this up there. And yeah, it was nice, and we were having a good chat, and I explained what was going on, and I'll try. So now it's 5 o'clock. I don't have my slides, and I don't have confirmation that I will have them tomorrow. And I'm getting myself wound up. My anxiety is going.
Sure.
And by 8 o'clock, I'm wound up like a top. And I texted Sadie. I said, I'm sorry, I know it's after hours, but I'm having, I detailed the problem. She's like, look, I'm putting my kid to bed. I will call you right after. Great. So 9 o'clock at night, she calls me. Now, I think this is extraordinary for
Yeah.
a healthcare, they have lives.
Yeah.
She calls me and I go through it and I vent and I whatever. And she says, okay, Joelle, Have you done everything possible to do? Yes. Is there anything more you could do? No. Then that's all you can do. You need to let it rest. Tomorrow's a new day.
Yeah.
And, you know, she was right.
Yeah.
And as I said, one of the big insights is sometimes you do everything you can do and you just have to let it rest.
Yeah.
And the next morning, I called them. Yes, we're putting it on there. I said, when can I come? And they said, we found them. They're on the desk, 10 a.m. So at 9:45, I'm at the door of the pathology department in the basement. No one's answering. And I'm like, huh. I find a janitor. I said, would you let me in? They said, sure. In I go. And now the admit the assistant's looking like, I don't see patients in here. I'm like, yeah, my slides. I just want the update. She goes, well, you can't be in here, but I'll tell the pathologist you're here. Why don't you go upstairs and come back in 15 minutes? So it took 30, but I had my slides in,
Yeah.
16 hours.
Yeah.
And I drove it up to UCSF and the nurse was waiting for them. And everything happened then as I wanted it to.
Yeah.
But that anxiety, like,
Yeah.
but what if they lost them? But
Uh-huh.
what if and that's real.
Yeah.
And I needed, if I mean, I told my husband what was going on, he's worried too.
Yeah.
But when I could talk to my psycho-oncologist, and she's like, look, it's not going to take them weeks to run the pathology. As soon as it gets there, they're going to know what to do. And they'll probably even start your chemo without it.
Yeah.
So, and she knew this because she's worked with them. And
Sure.
this is her world.
Uh-huh.
And, it was a calming, I get what you're feeling, what you're feeling is normal. And let me show you what's likely going to happen next.
Yeah.
And that was great.
That's wonderful. Yeah, because sometimes you just got to let it go. My son's on the spectrum, so I've been an advocate his whole life, and it's like it's those things where
Right.
you come in and you're just ready to kick ass. This is going to happen, right?
Right.
That's it. That's all there is to it. And you're from Jersey. My dad was from Brooklyn, raised in Long Island. I have that Italian blood. We aren't playing. All right,
No.
we're going in and we're going to get it done. So of all these things that you've done and accomplished and evolved into in your life, what are you the proudest of?
I can say I'm pretty proud of this book.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was it was really hard.
Sure.
Uh, I wrote throughout my entire journey on a caring bridge, and people were following and commenting, and I thought, oh, I'll just take the caring bridge and do a little bit to it, and I'll have a book. That is not what happens
Yeah.
because it's not a book anyone wants to read. Like
Right.
they wanted to read it in the moment because it was happening. It was like
Yeah.
news. But, history isn't, here's a bunch of news reports slapped together and we call it history.
Yeah.
So it was a lot harder. I'm not a natural introvert. I'm an extrovert. So sitting down and just writing is really a lot of energy for me.
Yeah.
And, my first draft of the book was okay. It was good enough that a publisher, that takes about 5%, they said, well, we really like it, but it needs a developmental edit. I had no idea what that meant. What that basically meant was she was going to tear apart the whole book and reconstruct it and tell me things I needed to write and cut things that she felt were redundant or superfluous or what have you. I mean, what a job.
Yeah. Right.
What a job. And, again, like you, I'm from Jersey. I'm big, I'm loud, I'm opinionated. Yeah, no, my developmental editor, very nice woman from Canada, very quiet, was like, but we're going to do this. And so she made the book 10 times better.
Yeah.
And I am so thankful for that.
Yeah.
But it was hard. I mean, I finished cancer treatment in May 4th, 2023 was when I was declared pathologically cancer free,
Yeah.
which means there is no evidence of any cancer in my cells. Fabulous. May I always stay that way. PCR. But the book's coming out in January of 2025, right? Because it takes a long time.
Yeah.
And then I elected before my developmental editor, I said, my story, my mother's story, my sister's story, they're good, but one family may not be enough of a sample set. So I interviewed about 25 other women who have faced cancer, and about 12 of their stories are also in the book. And that's why I can say, like, the cancer filter is universal.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
point you made uh, about I'm going to say yes, I'm going to do things. I think that's also universal,
Yeah.
right? And I got this when I was 13 or 15.
Yeah.
I, you don't, life's not a guarantee.
Yeah.
You don't know that you get tomorrow.
Yep. Yep.
Um, and that doesn't mean be careless or be stupid, but if you have the opportunity to do something you want to do or be with people that you love and care for, oh, say yes.
Yeah. For sure.
Go do it.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, everyone has a perception of you. Family, friends, colleagues, everyone that knows you. But who are you? What's your perception of you?
Who am I? Wow. I don't think I've had to answer that since I applied to college.
This is the therapy hour.
Okay. Um, I'm a person who cares deeply about helping other people be their best person. And I strive to be a person of integrity, to be a person who loves deeply and fiercely. Um, I am a thinker. I am a performer. I am a mother and a wife. Um, I, who am I? I'm a, I'm a proud Jewish woman. And I really just love seeing people, whether they are my clients, people who work for me, my children, my friends. I love seeing people surprise themselves with what they are capable of doing, of being. That really gives me a kick. And I guess the word that's coming to my mind is I'm a catalyst.
Yeah. So, Crushing the Cancer Curveball is the book. If anyone wants to pick up a copy, catch you live doing the music or any of the good work that you're doing in your world, where can they go to
Thank
find
you.
out?
So you go to joellekaufman.com, and that will give you where you can see me speak, where you can catch clips of, moments like this, where you can get a copy of the book. There's also, I built a bunch of resources for myself when I was going through, and so I've made those available to other people so that you have some tools. These are not medical tools, but these are things like tracking your side effects or your symptoms, tracking your medications, going through your finances, and understanding what your resources are, because cancer can be financially devastating, and knowledge is power.
Yeah.
So you can find that there. As for the music, I could put a link to the band on that. Mostly, if you want to follow us on Facebook, we're Suburban Outlaws NP. But we just play in the Bay Area, so
Okay.
you have to come to us.
Yeah, absolutely. Joelle, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much for your light. Thank you for your story. Have a great holiday season.
You too.